You know, one of the great things about the whole vintage computer scene is that there's so many people within those communities designing and building modern add-ons for all these classic systems. And while you can buy the vast majority of these things pre-built, you can also buy them in kit form. In fact, we have done that previously here on the channel. I bought the kit of this RGB to HDMI adapter. This was actually one of the first SMD soldering projects that I had ever undertaken, albeit this is quite a simple wee board. But at the end of the video building this, I said I would try and use this as like a springboard to move on to like an accelerator. I think instead though, the next logical step would be like a 8MB fast RAM board, possibly for this machine. And so that time has come. I've got a board here. This is for the GottaGoFastRAM 8MB fast RAM card for the Amiga 500. So today, let's try and build this. I thought this looked difficult. This almost looks impossible. But we can only try our best. So we've got the soldering iron with a brand new tip. Even got a new sponge. We've got one big bag full of parts. Some not so bad solder. Some really good flux. Decent pair of tweezers. New roll of braid. One half-drank cup of coffee. Even got a head-mounted torch. And all that just to try and put this together. The GottaGoFastRAM 8MB autoconfig fast RAM by Live2. There's the GitHub address, and I will stick that in the video description. Quite a bit to get onto this, and the pitch on these pins is incredibly fine. The most difficult part will probably be the Cpld. So no time like the present. That is where we're going to start, because if we can get that on first, we can try and program it using a Raspberry Pi. And if that's on and if that works, well, surely the rest of it then will be really easy. And I almost forgot the Fume Extractor. Remember this? We built this on the channel ages ago. I always forget to use this thing, but we're definitely going to get it out today because there's quite a bit of soldering to do on this. It just keeps those nasty fumes away from me. So apologies for the fan noise. I'll do my best to try and edit it out, but it's just going to be there in the background. The Cpld, sure, what am I complaining about? I mean, it's at least the size of my fingernail. So how are we going to do this? Well, we need to get the thing orientated first. That dot there denotes pin 1, and there's a dot down here. So that needs to turn, and that's going to sit about there. Right, that's it aligned, and you might see I've got a bit of Captain tape over one half of it there, just to hold it in place. The other bit of equipment that you might have seen is the magnifying glass, and I have inspected that underneath the glass just to make sure it is in the correct location, and I'm pretty sure it is. So let's just go for it. Chip quick. This stuff works wonders. I need it to work wonders right now. Probably a bit too much, but yeah, whatever. We can clean it up. I'm just going to put a dab of solder on the iron itself. And let's just see about even trying to get a couple of the pins tacked down. Then we can inspect it again. So I've just done those first couple of pins there. Let me bring the magnifying glass in to see what that looks like. It doesn't look too bad to me, and maybe that's coming through in focus there on the camera. It's really hard to tell through the viewfinder, but I think we can just go for it and try to do the rest of them. Well, the rest of the ones on that side anyway. So again, just tin up the iron and let's just do it. So of course we have a bridge, because why wouldn't we? Right, that's that whole side done. Let me inspect it again. Again, I'm not too sure just how well that's coming through on the camera, but I think that's actually worked out okay. Only thing we can do really is get the rest of it done. Well, that's it on. I don't see any problems looking through the magnifying glass, and I've buzzed out a few of the pins out to various pads, and they all seem to be okay. Well, the ones I checked anyway. In fact, I'm so happy with that, I think it deserves a swig of coffee. Oh, it's freezing. So the next thing to do then is try and program this. And for that, we need one of these. Well, it's done. This programmed eventually. I didn't actually record it though, because I knew this was going to be difficult, and it was nothing short of a nightmare. Nothing to do with my soldering around this, all this is fine. It was all about this Raspberry Pi and just my complete lack of knowledge about this thing. Had to set up a new SD card, but with the new bulldozer version of Raspbian out, well, things just didn't want to work. So with massive thanks to Liv2 and Call286, those two guys on Discord, basically talked me through how to set this up with the previous version of Raspbian, how to wire this up and how to program it. So thank you very much, guys. While this did take me quite a few hours to get it programmed, I dare say without your help I never would have got there. And it really is just a case of setting up your SD card, copying the correct GED file onto it, making off a wire, something like that, sticking that in there, holding it with a bit of tension, and just starting the programming. That was it. Takes about 30 seconds or so and job done. But just to show you quickly, to actually program the Cpld, well, I just followed the instructions on this GitHub, courtesy of Liv2, the guy who actually created the board. He pointed me towards this, and looking back at it now, well, it is actually rather simple. So once you have your Raspberry Pi set up, just from the command line, you just run these commands here. Connect up your Raspberry Pi as follows. Now when I was doing it, I also powered the Cpld from the Raspberry Pi on the 3.3 volt line, pin 1. Could have took that from pin 17 as well. And then it's just a matter of downloading the correct GED file and running that. Obviously replacing buster.ged with the GottaGoFastRAM version. So we're finished with this. What part should we try and glue on next? I'm thinking we should maybe do the RAM chip, and then we could do these ICs, and then we'll put all the little bits on. RAM. Right, which way around does this go? Dot up there, and you can see a notch and like the outline of a chip. That's pin 1. And a dot on the IC itself. That needs lined up in that sort of orientation. I'm just going to use a bit of the Captain tape again to hold it in place. Right, that looks pretty good to me. All lined up. Get our chip quick on. And same process again really, just going to tin up the iron. And then we can try and flow it. I think I had too much solder on it there to start with. But no real problem, we can just bring in a bit of wick. And that soon sorts out the blob. That looks pretty good to me. I will of course check it under the magnifying glass, but looks okay. I'll do these two. Same thing again, just, and then we'll take a look at all these smaller bits. Okay, all of the ICs are on. Well, there is the voltage regulator to fit over here, but we'll come back to that. Just a matter of doing all of the little passives. And the first ones I'm going to do are the two ferrite beads there and there. That's these things. You know, in hindsight, it might have been better to do all the passives first, because some of them are going to be quite hard to solder up. The likes of that's going to be tight. That one there beside the Cpld is going to be tight to get onto, as is that one. Well, if I'm ever doing one of these again, or should I say when I'm doing one of these again, I think that's what I'll do. And yes, I do have another board to build. You may have noticed all the parts. I have twice as many as I actually need. Let's get these ferrite beads on. So I'll just do one of these on the camera. I don't need to bore you with all of this. A little bit of flux. Pick up the part in my brand new tweezers. I've got a bit of solder on the iron. That's one side down. And I just checked there, it is sitting flat. So a little bit more solder. And that's it. Accidentally dropped a bit of solder onto that pad. Where's my braid? Both of them are on, but that one isn't particularly straight. So here's what I'm going to do. I've covered that RAM chip just beside it there with a bit of Kapton tape. And if we take the hot air gun, and if we just heat up this component here, the solder and the flux there should actually pull the part itself into place. Yep, I think you just seen it move. That looks a lot better now, doesn't it? It's coming together rightly, isn't it? That is almost everything that we need to fit, apart from the voltage regulator and an awful lot of pins. But that voltage regulator, well, that's where we have a problem. You just cannot get them. Zero stock on Mouser, similar story on the likes of DigiKey. They are going to get 70-odd thousand of them in August next year. So I didn't quite fancy waiting just that long. What I've done instead is to order what they do have in stock, and unfortunately all that is the through-hole part. Now if we look at the datasheet for the surface mounted one, pin 1 is ground, pin 2 is voltage out, pin 3 is voltage in. And if we look at the datasheet for the through hole, well, pin 1 is voltage out, pin 2 is ground, and pin 3 is voltage in. So somehow what we have to do is make this fit on there. I'm going to have to get a little bit creative with how we're going to bend the legs on this. Try and fit it, you know, something like that. And bend the legs round onto those pads. And so this is what I've come up with. Very much less than ideal, but it's all we can do. Stick that on there, something like that. Just while we're soldering it though, I'm going to hold it in place with a bit of blue tack. It's going to look a bit of a mess, isn't it? But it's all we've got. The parts are just not out there. Perhaps if anyone watching this would just so happen to have stock of those voltage regulators, well, I need 3 of them in total, and I would be forever grateful if somebody had a few spare and could let me know. I would happily buy them off you. It's actually quite hard to solder this as well. But I think that's us. I am going to double check that though. So I've got the multimeter on continuity here. Hopefully you can hear that. Pin 1, that pin there, that is voltage out. So that should be shorted through to 3.3 volt. And it is. Middle pin is ground. That should be shorted to there. And it is. This one is the 5 volt coming in. It should be shorted to whatever one of these is the 5 volt coming to the processor. Presumably that one there. I think we're good to go. Last thing to do is to fit all the pins. Well, need to make a decision if we're going to fit all the pins or if we're going to fit a socket over the top of this. That's the pins. They were kindly provided to me by Live2, who also provided me with the other board. I've actually had this sitting for, I don't know, nearly a year. I'm only getting around to it now. Can only apologise for that. But I wanted to practice on this one first, then I'm going to build this one up as neatly as I can. Albeit that said, I do think this is coming together really well. The one issue with just fitting these is that the processor, will sit on top of it then. But with the height of that, the processor might not clear that. It might hit that and give us connectivity issues. So I think what I'll do instead is try to mount this to the underside of a socket. So something like that. Although I will have to cut away those middle supports, and I may have to trim back a little bit of the plastic on the sides here, but I can do that. And I just think doing it that way, once that is flush, well, the top of the socket then doesn't really sit any higher than the top of that. So everything still should go together okay. And that is it built. So the socket's on, it mounts flush to the board, and then we just soldered it on the underside. Still plenty of legs there to go down into the socket on the Amiga. Had to just grind off a couple of little bits of the socket and obviously remove the 2 supports, but that is it. Nothing left to do but test it. I just hope it works, because if it doesn't, and if we had to remove any of these components, I have no idea how we would even do that, not with that socket in place. So I've pulled out the 500 that I built the RGB to HDMI board for. I think it's only fitting that we stick the 8 meg fast RAM board in here as well. But just before we do that, let's quickly test this machine. I mean, I don't know why it suddenly wouldn't be working, but let's just see. Boots up okay. Can we boot into test kit? Yep, all looks fine. And it's showing the 1 megabyte total memory, as in 0.5 meg chip and the 0.5 meg of slow RAM. So I think we could call this machine good. Let's get that 8 meg fast RAM board installed. Now, just to make this a bit easier, I'm just going to disconnect the HDMI out. The direct capture that I'm doing anyway, I'm doing off the RGB. because truth told, I can't find a spare HDMI cable just this second. Right, processor out. This socket's a wee bit damaged at the bottom there. Shouldn't really matter. Let's see if we can get this in. So that just sits in line like that, and then the processor goes back on top. Oh, need to be careful. Just bent the pin. That's it fixed. Let's try that again. That can be a problem of these turned sockets. If you don't have all the pins lined up perfectly before you push it in, there is a high chance of bending something. I think we're lined up okay now. Yep, I think that is in, so no time like the present. Is it going to post? Looking good so far. Let's try test kit. Right, F1, take us into the memory. Come on. Oh yes! 8 megabytes of fast RAM. Excellent. Seemingly working. Let's not get too excited though. Calm down a little bit. Let's do a test. And I'm going to leave this running for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, something like that. Well, as you can see, it's been round 15 times. I dare say that our 8 meg GottaGoFastRAM board is good. I am incredibly happy with that and a little bit surprised. Something I built worked first time. What about if we try sysinfo? So if we check out the memory, there it is there. Fast RAM, 8 megabyte. Boards, yep, there it is. 8 megabyte, 02. Does it make any difference to the speed? Should that not have made this machine slightly faster? Notice that all the assets here are loaded into slow RAM. Why did it do that? I thought it was meant to use the fast RAM first. What about if we remove this? Just pull that off and leave it sitting there. Let's boot into sysinfo again. So you can see this time it's loaded its assets in the chip RAM and the fast RAM. If we run the speed test, yeah, that's more like it. As I would have expected, the machine is ever so slightly faster. And checking out the memory information, well, this time our fast RAM, our 8 megabyte, comes up on the first page. It's got the first priority. Why did it not use the fast RAM when that was installed? Who knows? But regardless, our board is seemingly good. Well, there we are. One GottaGoFastRAM board, 8 megabytes of fast RAM for the Amiga 500. Built, installed and working. Is anyone else as surprised as I am that it worked first time? Hopefully that just shows that my soldering skills are getting a bit better. I still would definitely not claim to be an expert at this. And yes, I'm sure you could point out many flaws in the techniques I was using today. Probably that soldering iron tip was a bit big, if I'm being honest with myself. I do need to get some more because I do have another couple of things coming up. Now, back when we looked at the 14 megahertz accelerator, I said I was going to build an IDE 68K to sit in line with that. What I'm actually thinking though is that I might put that IDE adapter into this machine along with that 8 meg fast RAM board. And solely just because this machine now has more memory, and more memory is better suited to having IDE. We'll have more spare to play with, just make things a bit easier for WHD load. But I think if this video proves nothing else, it's that if I can build it, well, anyone can. All I would recommend you do if you're interested in getting started in some surface mount soldering is find an old scrap board and practice taking components off it and sticking them back on. Really, all you need is good solder and, more importantly, good flux. Cannot recommend that Chip Quick stuff enough. It is absolutely fantastic. It just makes your life so much easier. And I must say that I am incredibly fired up by all this. And in fact, I've got a couple of other terrible ideas that we'll get a look at some point in the future. But until then, thanks very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Why not hit subscribe if you haven't done so already? Still plenty more yet to come here on CRG, and I'll see you next time.